Their journey began in Yasharel, but they were scattered across the face of the earth, each one with its own beats, and each one with its own rhythm. As the dry bones are being revived, the beat begins again at the heart of the tribe.
Hello, welcome to Heart of the Tribes. My name is Chelle Wagner. I'm so glad you came to join me today. I'm so glad I get to come and do this presentation. This has been the most interesting series that I've gotten to do with my friend Nurse Lee on the 12 tribes and how they line up and relate to the body system. And today we're going to be talking about Dan, the tribe of Dan, and the sensory system, everything that we experience this world with, our eyes, our ears, our smell, sensations, touch, sensations on the skin, all of it. I mean, it's just amazing how this tribe lines up with that. And so we're so excited to bring this with you today. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome my guest. Nurse Lee, welcome.
Shalom, Chelle. I am so happy to be here today. This is going to be exciting, Dan, and the sensory system, the eyes and the ears especially, it's just, wow, it was fun. Really, this one was really, well, I say that every time, don't I? This one was just really awesome for me. There was a lot, I've told you, I've had a lot that's just, this is popped out and that's popped out. I just can't wait to get in and see what you have to bring and then fit what I have. We never talk about it. So I'm always just as excited as everyone else to hear what you're bringing so I can fit mine with it.
I know. I always feel the same way. I'm like, okay, well, I got what Yah gave me, but now I get to hear what he gave Nurse Lee and how this all works together. And it's like getting a present every Thursday.
It is. Same for me.
It's really fun. All right. I did want to put up our website so people know where to come see us and see all the good things we've got going on. Your husband, James, has been working so hard on this website, and you've been working hard too. You've made, we've got a new room spray on the website, which is really fun. It's specifically for this season, so we're excited about that. We have some other learning documents. We're doing a lot of new things and changing things around, and we're real excited about that. And I hope everybody will come check out what we've got going on. We also have the Telegram groups. Tell everybody about the Telegram groups, Lee.
Oh my gosh, we have the Telegram groups. You can also access all of those links from our website. So that's the wonderful thing is the links are in there at the very bottom of the resource page. You just click it and it takes you right there. There's no guesswork or people having to let you in. You just are in through the link. And we have our main group, which is for prayer and praise, and we share worship music. It's just a wonderful place for us to share our lives in. And then we've got Reports from Under the Desk, which is like our news channel, which is very interesting. There's always something in there that I'm learning or seeing. And it's just a good way to, keep an eye on what's happening out there or see actually the truth of it is what I should say.
What I love about Reports from Under the Desk, we have some of the smartest people in our group.
Oh, we do.
They are so sharp and they find stuff from all over. And it's nice because we have people in several different countries. And so they'll report, what's going on over, say, in Australia or New Zealand or, different places. And it's just really interesting. It's stuff that I don't necessarily see anywhere else.
And we wouldn't see it. We have Janny that posts a lot of stuff from what's going on in Canada. So we're seeing firsthand what's happening there. Then we've got people that are from Australia. we wouldn't be able to see that if we weren't all together. And James just corrected me, and he's right. The Telegram links are at the bottom of our mission page.
Oh,
So
good.
check our mission page out, because that is where our mission statement is. You can also look at every tab in there that's got all of the different shows that we do with a short bio. And there's going to be a lot more added to that when we get back from Sukkot. There's a lot of really interesting and exciting things on the horizon for us. But I do want to say we also have that men's group in Telegram that's Jacob's Dozen, that's strictly for men, which is good because they need that space to have men talk, you know.
Yeah.
So that's our wonderful groups. Oh, I almost forgot, we've got the Good Samaritan.
Yes.
Which is Laura Lee's group, which is a wonderful safe place for those that have been through any kind of addiction recovery or dealing with childhood trauma, or maybe those of us that just don't feel comfortable talking about certain things in front of large groups of people. It is a more intimate, more secure area for you to be able to share, because we all are going through this rough life in this rough season, and we definitely need each other in a place where we can have difficult conversations in a safe place.
Absolutely. There's so much value in these groups, and you know, for me, it helps make sure that we're not feeling like we're all alone. It's a place to connect, and we can connect with each other all throughout the day. It's fun to see what different people post and what's going on. And, you know, it was funny. I had a prayer need myself this morning, and I was able to post it, and I got immediate responses. And it was so funny because my back's a little jacked up today. And so I was even on the floor trying to stretch it out. And I have this 100-pound lap dog that sees if I'm in pain. And so she wants to comfort me, and she's like laying on me as I'm trying to stretch.
I'll help you.
I know you're trying to help me. It's just not exactly helpful.
You might actually be smothering me with love. See, that's what she was doing. I love you with love.
So funny.
Quincy is so sweet, though.
She is a sweet, sweet dog. She just really is. She, you know, since I got the Sears in 2014, I got her right after that, and she has just been such a good furry friend. I've never had a better furry friend than Quincy. Oh, she's sweet.
A good comforter.
She is. All right. Well, we better go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and add my presentation to the stream. And we're doing the Heart of Dan. So this is the psalm. And I think it's interesting. You know, I didn't know this about this psalm when Yah showed me this back in 2002, you know, about the Heart of Dan. 2002, 2003 is when Yah was showing me all this stuff, you know. And by 2004, I had it all in a booklet. But I only had the last one at the end at first, and then Yah kind of expanded it for me. But now that I understand this particular psalm, I see where Yah was dealing with the elder race in this psalm. This whole psalm is about Yah dealing with the elder race, because they were charged with watching over humanity, with helping and bringing justice, and many of them rebelled, you know, and Yah is kind of calling them to account. But this is what Yah showed me about Dan, you know, with it being a judge. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. It is a psalm of Assaf. It says, Elohim stands in the assembly of the mighty. He judges among the Elohim. How long will you judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. Rise up, Elohim, and judge the earth, for all the nations are yours. And so the first part of that is Psalms 82, 1-4. And then the last little verse, rise up, Elohim, and judge the earth, for all the nations of yours, are verse 8 out of that psalm. Okay, let's see if I can navigate here. I actually did a PowerPoint.
Wow. I
So,
love it.
I love it. I love this soaring eagle, because what's interesting, and we've covered this a little bit, but just to review, the eagle is on the main standard for the tribes, the 3 tribes that were located to the north, which would be Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, right? And they're on the north side of the tabernacle. And what's interesting, I've shared this, but what's interesting is the eagle. There's some very interesting facts about the eagle and their ability to rise above the storm and see things. And we're going to get to that. And we're going to review that a little bit in this presentation. But, so Dan was the lead tribe. Their tribe held this banner plus their own banner, which would have been the scales of justice, So just very interesting. Now, when Yah first gave me this information about, let me see if I can get rid of that. When he gave me this information that I ended up sharing with Nurse Lee, he's kind of showing me to use these paleo, the paleo for judge, for din, for whatever the name was, using the root. We've got a new show starting that we're going to be really digging into understanding roots, understanding research tools, understanding how to study. We're going to have a whole program on that specifically. So anyway, with Dan, it is judged, and the word is din or Dan, really, depending on your pronunciation of Hebrew, which I don't know that I have the right pronunciation. I'm more about the content and the function and, what are we looking at, rather than being a linguist. I am not a linguist.
Me either. I'm too Southern for that.
Me too, Lee. I've got to leave that to someone much more educated in the Hebrew than I am. Right. So please forgive if I am totally butchering it, if you were the linguist and understand much more than I do about how to say it. All right. So what I did see in the paleo, we've got the dalet, of course, the doorway, the entrance way, things that open up to you, something that causes things to become very open, it's connected to, with the vav, which is always a connector, the noon, life, right? So very interesting that our ability to see connects to, I think, our growth in life, because that it's like new life. It's life that's sprouting up. It's something sprouting up. It's a fish darting through the water. It's movement, it's action, it's activity. It is what living life looks like, it's on the move, right? And so I find that very interesting. So, whatever doorway you open basically connects to the life that you're going to have, is what I'm seeing in this paleo picture here. So this is what Yah showed me, is it does deal with the eyes and ears, the sensory system, which is to provide vision and hearing and interpret visual and oral information about external conditions, right? It is our, the whole sensory system, from what I can tell, what you can feel, taste, touch, see, smell, hear. And so I was thinking about that. I have this on each one, and Nurse Lee and I are going to, in the future, on Tuesdays, we'll be starting, and this is after Sukkot, once we get through this series, because we still have a few more to do on this series on Thursdays. But once we complete this series, we're going to move this particular type show to Tuesday, and we're going to dig into some of these modern world effects on the tribe, on the body, how we get along. We're going to keep going in this direction and see what all Yah continues to share with us. So I'm excited. So one of the things I think that we'll dig into with this is, you know, the toxic TV programs, what happens to our eye system, our, you know, our hearing system, and what that causes in our life. So I'm looking forward to that. That's something for us all to look forward to. Okay,
Absolutely.
So let's start. Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it, Lee?
It is. I'm so excited. So excited.
I love doing this series with you. I really do.
I do too.
I find it fascinating. I hope everybody else enjoys it as much as we're enjoying it. But it's truly a blessing for me. I am just really enjoying it.
Uh-huh.
All right. So we see when Dan was named. So here's a big clue for us about his life, you know, how his life begins, right? It's found in Genesis or Bereshit, chapter 30, verses 1 through 6. And it says, and when Rachel saw that she bore Yaakov no children, Rachel envied her sister. What have we learned about envy, Lee? It opens the door to every evil ruach, right?
They all just filter in at that point.
You know, I find it very interesting that before Rachel made the decision to steal her father's Elohim, she was entering into a ruach of envy. Yeah. You know, and what does that open? Because that choice of hers to end up stealing her father's Elohim is what ended
her life.
Yeah, it cost her life. And but what preceded that? A ruach of jealousy. It brings every other evil spirit with it, and I think it captures you, deceives you in a way that what we've learned about deception, that you don't know actually what's happening. You're unaware of what's happening, you know. So to constantly monitor ourselves, and anytime those thoughts arrive, to go, well, why did she get that instead of me? Well, why is he getting to do that instead of me? I think so-and-so likes this one better than me. You know, I want that position. It's that kind of, if that kind of stuff is starting to bubble up within your ruach, within your thoughts, within your pray and fall on your face, ask Yah to deliver you, because that's that evil ruach of jealousy, and it will ruin your life.
I think it puts a veil over your eyes from the truth. At the moment that you let that envy in and you start feeding it, you feed that monster, you immediately can't see the truth anymore. You know, your eyes are shut to the truth. There's a veil, like a cataracts, over your eyes.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I mean, exactly what begins to happen. So, and when Rachel saw that she bore Yaakov no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Yaakov, give me children or else I die. Look, this is the first thing she does with that, right? She starts accusing her husband as if it's his fault. Yeah. You know? So first she's into envy, then she's creating strife in her marriage, you know. All right there. We start seeing the doors open, you know. And Yaakov's anger, so it made him angry with her, and she was his beloved Rachel. I mean, she was the love of his life, right? And it made him angry with her. It created strife in their marriage. And Yaakov's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in Elohim's stead? Who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? And she said, behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to be his woman. And Yaakov went in unto her, and Bilhah conceived and bore Yaakov a son. And Rachel said, Elohim has judged me and has heard my voice and has given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. Wow, that was a lot. Even his name was born in strife, in contention. I mean, I think about this story when I think about what was going on. You know, what do we know about Reuben, right? He went searching for the mandrakes, right? He went searching for those mandrakes to give to his mom to entice Yaakov back. So these children were so aware of this strife and contention between these two sisters and in this family. You know, it's just amazing what was going on there.
Right.
And I mean, it just opened up into everything, and it filters down all through the family. And what costs Reuben his place as the firstborn and the blessings, except that then he ends up raping Bilhah while Bilhah was drunk.
Yeah, drunk and passed out. I mean,
Yeah.
it just shows that all of them, what they were letting in, was affecting every single member of this family in different ways. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's so funny. My mom was asking me some questions lately about these extra biblical books, and the way that I explained why I go and I study these extra biblical books is the same reason that I would study history from any nation, because the scriptures give us the scriptures, right? But then there are extra biblical texts, which are historical documents of the history of the Ivrim, the Hebrew people, you know, and so it's like any other culture. Wouldn't we want to understand the history of the culture? And these have been kept in order, you know, for thousands of years.
Right.
You know,
and it's their perspective of what they were going through, you know, and that's vital in history, is to understand their perspective. I know what mine is from over here. That doesn't help me at all understand. I need to know their perspective.
Yeah, because their culture, it lets us know what
Totally
was their
different.
culture,
Yeah.
what was, you know, normal for them, how did things work, and without knowing that, it's easy to twist the scriptures to fit our current worldview, which is totally inaccurate. It's not going to fit the times that we live in today. So understanding the history we get from these other books is vitally important. You know, just like any historian that studies any culture is going to be reading their history books and trying to understand what it was like in their day. And it's no different when we go to study the scriptures. We want to understand what is the context, what did it look like in their time, you know,
and it's why, like, you dig into the paleo, to the pictographs, while we look at Hebrew words and what the actual meaning is, because English, you know, we've heard Dr. Pigeon say this before, is just an ugly language. We've taken all these beautiful languages and just made it stupid. You know, I don't know why anyone would think I'm just going to go on the English, you know, definitions of everything. You really got to dig into the Hebrew for the Old Testament, or go towards the Greek and the New, to get what that deeper meaning is. Some of their words, especially in the Old Testament, that are translated to then Greek or then to English, they miss the context, because we don't translate in English the same as you would translate in Hebrew. It's different.
Yeah, it is. And it's a really important point. And that's I'm going to try to get this recorded before Sukkot, depending on how I'm feeling and if I can get it done. I'm really hoping to. But I wanted to play at least one show in during Sukkot that was kind of a book review that goes over some research tools and explain a little bit about how these books work, because in our mindset, we've always thought that, you know, we've got the Old Testament and the New Testament, and it's separated. Well, that's just it's a fallacy, because one, I believe probably that the New Testament was originally written in Hebrew, because everybody there spoke Hebrew. But even if I'm not right about that, Hebrew words, there's equivalence in Greek. When you understand the languages, and you look at the Greek was patterned after the Hebrew, and those letters line up. And then the English was, and a few extras were added. I believe that the way it works is Hebrew has 22 letters, Greek has 24, and English has 26. So it's been added to a bit, but it doesn't mean that we can't, go back and forth, because from my understanding, all of the new, what we refer to as the New Testament, is simply a commentary, an explanation and commentary on explaining the scriptures. That was why everyone was so amazed, because the living yahusha, the living word of Elohim, the living water, which is what the word is, it's water to our souls. We're washed by the water of the word, right? And so when that happens, what he was explaining in the New Testament scriptures, and the Besorah, that's what we call it in Hebrew, the Besorah, the good news, right? And so what he was explaining, everybody, as he was given these parables that explained scriptural concepts, everybody was amazed, because for the first time they were understanding what had been written, because it had become very legalistic, and the life had been sucked right out of it by when they had gone into Babylon, and all the extra rules and extra things and extra this, and the people were just confused as to what was even real or should be happening. So it's really, really amazing.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, I'll move on. I'm on rabbit trails today. Okay, so Yaakov prophesied that the tribe of Dan would judge his people. In Genesis 49:16 through 18, it says, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Yasharel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that bites the horse heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. I have waited for your Yeshua, O Yahweh. Boy, doesn't that feel so esoteric? It
does.
How am I supposed to know what that means? That's how it sounds. And it was written for the time period that we live in, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's what's so interesting when you see the beginning part of Genesis 49, when Yaakov gathers the tribes and says, listen, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to you at the end of days, at the Akarit Hayamim, at the very last point of time before our Redeemer comes back, right? And so this is what I think that people have been reading this since it was written down and going, well, what does that mean? And I think we still are. So we're trying to piece it together. It's like a puzzle to me sometimes, It is. We're piecing it together one little bit at a time, So one thing that I like to do is see whose story are we given in the scriptures that they were from specific tribes. And so the one that I decided to concentrate on is very famous in Judges. His story is in Judges chapter 13 through 16. So the Hebrew word for Judges is shoftim. I'm trying to get my own tongue used to speaking the Hebrew language, because it says in Zephaniah 3:9 that he's going to restore the pure language to his people. So I'm getting my practice in now. This is why I keep digging into it so much, right? Because that's, I believe, what we'll be speaking again. And I don't want to sound like a babbler. All right. So let's look at Samson, right? Or I think it was Shimshon, right? So this story takes place in Zorah. That is a town in Dan, and Zorah means hornet. So he was
Wow.
born in the middle of a hornet's nest, right? Manoah is his father, and he's the man with a barren wife. His name means rest. He and his wife receive a visitation, actually a couple of visitations, to let them know she would bear a very special child and that he was to be a Nazir from the womb. So she was to partake of no wine or strong drink or any unclean food. No razor was to touch this child's head. All right.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so a Nazir is a consecrated one, a devoted one. The laws of the Nazarite are found in number 6. A corresponding word in Greek is hagiazo and is translated as sanctified or hallowed in the King James Version. It is found in the following Basora passage as sanctify, and I'll read that in a minute. But I wanted to look at this word Nazir in the pictograph. So we've got a noon, we've got life sprouting up, right? We've got life taking place, and then we have a plow. This is a zayin, and it looks like a plow. And then we have a resh, which to me, it can be, like the chief prince. It can be a leader. It can be how man is thinking, what's going on in the mind. It's got all those different things. And I didn't have a chance to do a word picture on this one. I'll have to work on that. But I wanted to go ahead and get that up here, right? I mean, if I look at it, to me, just off the top of my head, if to have life, you've got to plow away the thoughts of man. That's what.
Wow, that's good.
That could be one, to be a Nazarene, to be someone who is set apart, which is what a Nazarite is, a Nazarite, right? You're set apart. So your life is going to have to be cut off from the way man thinks in order to fulfill that commission. And I think that's probably a pretty good definition with that one. Okay, so let's read John chapter 17, verses 13 through 21. It says, "And now come I to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they might have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I've given them your word, and the world has hated them, because they're not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I pray not that you should take them out of the world, but that you should guard them from evil. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Sanctify them through your truth. Your word is truth. And you have sent me into the world. Even so have I also sent them into the world. And for their sakes, I sanctify myself." See, that's that set apartness. That's that Nazarite, right? It's being sanctified. This is how we can start understanding the Hebrew and the Greek are really saying the same thing. This is what this is talking about. So, "And for their sakes, I sanctify myself, that they also might be sanctified through the truth. Neither pray I for these alone, but for them also, which shall believe on me through their word." That's us, because I didn't walk in the times of Yeshua, right? That wasn't what I got to do, but I believe the words of Paul, and I believe the words of Peter, and I believe the words of John, and and Matthew and Mark, and I believe these accounts. I believe these things happened, and I'm believing in it because of their word, right? So let me see. "Neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word, that they all may be yakad," right? One. They all may be one body with one head, right? "As you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be ikad in us, that the world may believe that you have sent me." Okay. Again, here's another one in Acts 20, 28 through 32. Take heed, therefore, unto yourselves and to all the flock over which the Ruach HaKodesh has made you overseers, to feed the called out assembly of Elohim, which he's purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Also of your own selves shall men arise, speaking perverse things, to draw away the Talmudim after them. Therefore, watch and remember. Okay, we've got the eyes, right? Watching. We're watching. Therefore, watch and remember that by the space of 3 years I cease not to warn everyone night and day with tears. And now, brethren, I commend you to Elohim and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and to give you an inheritance among all them which are sanctified, all them that have been set apart, all them that are Nazirs, right? When I start looking at this, it tells me that believers are to be Nazirs, right? That's what we're to be. We're to be set apart. Okay, so now let's look at a little bit of this in Judges. Judges 14, 1 through 4. It says, and Shimshon, which is Samson, went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Palestine. And he came up and he told his father and mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnah and the daughters of the Palestine. Now, therefore, get her for me to be my woman. So he's demanding of his parent what he wants, right? Then his father and his mother said unto him, is there never a woman among the daughters of your brethren or among all my people that you go to take a woman of the uncircumcised Palestine? And Shimshon said unto his father, get her for me, for she pleases me well. But his father and mother knew not that it was of Yahweh, that he sought an occasion against the Palestine, for at that time the Palestine had dominion over Yasharel. Now I find this an interesting thing right here. You know, Yah knew Dan's heart, right? Or I'm sorry, Samson, Shimshon's heart, right? Of the tribe of Dan. He knew already what he was going to choose. And even though he chose to anoint him to be a Nazir from the womb, to have this special power to be a judge in Yasharel, did not mean that this man was living a life in his mind, in his heart, separated unto Yah. I mean, we can see it in the story. You know, you can be called of Yah. And I've always looked at it this way, Lee. I've always said, you know, Yah knits us together in the womb, right? And to me, this is a perfect example of this. He knits us together in the womb and he puts certain gifts, abilities, talents within us, right? And then we're born. And then we have free will. So we have a choice to make about how we're going to choose to use those gifts, talents, and abilities and blessings that he gives us, right? And that determines what our character is, because there's a huge difference between giftings and character. Someone can have all the giftings in the world. They can be, you know, so talented, so intelligent. They can sound so good. But then when you watch the choices they make, that reveals what their character is. And that's what we really need to be aware of. You know, we can't just follow after what seems so interesting and so intelligent and so, you know, but, you know, if we're going to let someone have influence in our life, it's really important to know what is their character, you know,
Right.
That's important. Okay. All right. So
That's like,
go ahead.
real quick, it made me think about a meme I saw this morning that I really loved. It said, when you take the Lord's name in vain, that's basically taking his name, but then not taking his character. So I think it's a second witness that you brought that part up there, because I had really spent some reflection time this morning on that. So, wow.
Yeah, so interesting. It's so interesting how
Mhm.
Yah works for us to explain things and teach us, isn't it?
Amen.
If he wants us to know something, he's going to be putting it before us.
He does it all the time, and I'm so thankful.
Sometimes I wish I got it a little quicker, but
Yeah,
but that's on me, not him.
right. Me too.
I know. Okay, so now let's look at a little more out of this story in Judges. Let's look at Judges 16, 1 through 6. It says, Then went Shimshon to Gaza and saw there a harlot and went in unto her. And it was told the Gazathim, saying, Shimshon is come hither. And they compassed him in and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, In the morning, when it is day, we shall kill him. And Shimshon lay till midnight, and arose at midnight, and took the doors of the gate of the city and the two posts, and went away with them bar and all, and put them upon his shoulders, and carried them up to the top of a hill that is before Hebron. And it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the Seranim of the Philistine, okay, remember, this is the Philistines in your King James Version, right? And the Seranim of the Philistine came unto her and said unto her, Entice him and see wherein his great strength lies, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and we will give you every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Shimshon, Tell me, I pray, wherein your great strength lies, and wherewith you might be bound to afflict you. Whew. I mean, that question would have put you on guard, right? Right there. I mean, when you think about this, let me go back to this for a minute before I go into this next part. Did I skip over one? Yeah, that was what happened. I was wondering, it didn't look right, So, I mean, you still see his character. I mean, what we watch, I've seen there's been another really cruel thing, too, that he does with the foxes in between these stories. And, the character was just very lacking from this story. So what we see is Yaakov also said in Genesis 49:18, I wait for your deliverance, Adonai. Right? So we also see this in what in this blessing. There's been much speculation about this. I've heard everything in the world. Do you think the Antichrist is from Dan? Do you think that they've all been destroyed? Do you think, I mean, I've heard so much speculation on all this, right? So I'm trying to just go by what we can see from the story. Okay. Here's things that we know, because remember, we're putting together a puzzle. We're trying to understand what Yah wants us to know about these tribes, because he told us in scripture, this was written for your time period, right? So it's very important that we do our best to understand, but that's going to take a lot of study and digging, and we're still in the process of it. So we're building this puzzle. Okay. There's been much speculation about this whole thing. What we do know from 1 Kings 11 and 12 is that when the two houses of Yasharel split, Ephraim and Yehudah, Jeroboam used the territory of Dan. It was used to set up one of two golden calves, and the people of Ephraim called it the Most High God, the Most High El. Now, what's interesting, when you understand the territory that they were taking was Canaan, right? And the gods, the Elohims of Canaan that they worshipped, they believed that there was a principal god named El, right? And their story is that El's wife was Astarte, right? And or Ashtoreth, or however it's migrated.
Ishtar. There's so many.
Yeah, it's just migrated all the way down. So it was very confusing, I think, in the land, because we use the name El for Elohim, the only true Elohim, right? And yet they chose to use this in this Canaanite religion to name their god. And the story is that he mated with her and they had a son named Baal, and then Baal killed El, and Baal and his mother began to procreate and bring on this pantheon of gods, right? That's what their religion is, So very interesting that it was called by the people of Ephraim the Most High, which is El Elyon. That's what his name is, right? So, very, very interesting here that's what they named this golden calf. The entire book of Hosea explains why the whole house of Yasharel needs deliverance. And many accounts of the genealogies of the children of Yasharel, the word of Adonai is silent when it comes to Dan, right? There's no mention of him in specific places within these genealogical accounts. And to understand this, you can see Genesis 46, Numbers 26-42, First Chronicles chapters 2-8. And this gives us some of the history in that to understand, this is why there's so much speculation with this tribe. Okay, so let's concentrate on the tribal banner for the northern part of the tabernacle. So Dan is the lead tribe who carries the eagle banner for the other tribes of the north side of the tabernacle wilderness encampment, which is Asher and Naphtali. Okay, so here's a few facts about eagles. They have 2 sets of eyelids. They can close the inner set and protect their eyes from the world, and they still have unbelievable, sharp, long-range eyesight. This is how they can fly so high, and the debris doesn't blind them, because there's a lot of debris in the air. Especially in our day, right? Yeah. Who knows what's there by now? So I find that very interesting, that one of the most interesting things about an eagle is their sight, their perception. Mm-hmm. They mate for life. So there's a loyalty aspect there. They are predators and can carry much larger prey with their powerful feet. They soar high above the earth and get a completely different perspective on what is below, and the layout of it, that's, I love looking at aerial photographs to see things and just go, oh, well, that makes sense. This is over here in relation to this. And this is, where the mountains are in relation to the lake. And this is, it's just a different view when you rise above. They're able to fly above storms, which I find is I find this to be incredibly prophetic, that to enter into the gifts and abilities given to Dan, and to these, it wasn't just to Dan, because this eagle was on for all 3, this represented all 3 of those tribes. And so I think that we can see these giftings in all 3 of these tribes that follow. But with Dan in the sensory system, it's really the eyes and the ears. It's really going to, key in there for us too. Okay, let me go on. So I did want to share just a little bit about the Testament of Dan. This is, I started with chapter 1, verses 3, and went to the end. It says, I have proved in my heart and in my whole life that truth with just dealing is good and well-pleasing to Elohim, and that lying and anger are evil, because they teach man all wickedness. I confess this, therefore, this day to you, my children, that in my heart I resolved on the death of Joseph, my brother, the true and good man. Right? He had decided that Joseph needed to die. That's what he had decided. And I rejoiced that he was sold, because his father loved him more than us. He had that identity of being a lesser son because Bilhah was his mom, right? He wasn't born of one of the 2, preferred daughters.
Nice. Yeah.
Right. So for the ruach of jealousy and vainglory said to me, you yourself also are his son. Can you hear it now? Like that thought in the head. Hey, wait a minute. You deserve better than this. You're his son too. You know, that inner voice that's screaming, this isn't fair. You should do something about this, right? Inciting you to violence, inciting you to hatred, inciting you to jealousy, right? For the ruach of jealousy and vainglory said to me, you yourself also are a son. And one of the ruach of Baal stirred me up, saying, take this sword and with it slay Joseph. So shall your father love you when he is dead. Wow. Talk about an evil ruach from Baal, right? Now, this is the ruach of anger that persuaded me to crush Joseph as a leopard crushes a kid. Wow. But the Elohim of my fathers did not suffer him to fall into my hands. He's saying, Yah himself protected Joseph, wouldn't let me get a hold of him, because if I could have gotten a hold of him, I would have killed him. Wow. So that I should find him alone and slay him and cause a second tribe to be destroyed in Yasharel. I'm trying to figure out if he's saying here that a second tribe would have been destroyed in Yasharel because it would have destroyed Dan as well. Like it would have destroyed two tribes. It would have destroyed both Joseph, the tribe of Joseph, and the tribe of Dan. Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's the only thing that my mind is able to wrap around that thought at this moment. Okay, and now a little bit out of chapter 2. Well, I think this is all of chapter 2. And now, my children, behold, I'm dying, and I tell you a truth, that unless you keep yourselves from the ruach of lying and anger and love, truth, and long-suffering, ye shall perish. For anger is blindness and does not suffer one to see the face of any man with truth. It's saying it totally warps your perception, right? So here's a tribe that is meant to rise to their fullness and power and strength because of their ability to have correct sight and insight, right? I mean, there's an insight that goes with this. And here we're saying if anger has entered in, it blinds you. Totally blinds you. You cannot see things correctly. All right. So you don't understand what truth is. For though it be a brother, he knows him not. Though it be a prophet of Yahweh, he disobeys him. Though a righteous man, he regards him not. Though a friend, he does not acknowledge him. For the ruach of anger encompasses him with a net. There's our net again. The net of deceit. And blinds his eyes, and through lying darkens his mind, and gives him his own peculiar vision. Right there. There's the eyes right there. And wherewith encompasses it his eyes, with hatred of heart, so as to be envious of his brother. All right. So let's just look at a couple of more things here. In Deuteronomy 20:15, it says, but it shall come to pass, if you will not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh Eloheka, to guard to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. And then what are the curses? Let's go down and look. In Deuteronomy 28 and 29, it says, Yahweh shall smite you with madness, right? An inability to perceive things correctly, and blindness, and totally loss of insight, and astonishment of heart, right? Your heart even can't figure out what's right, what's true, who to trust, who to not, and you shall grope at noonday as the blind gropes in darkness, and you shall not prosper in your ways, and you shall be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save you. So this word blindness is H5788 in the Strong's and Brown Driver Briggs and whatever else uses these is keyed to the Strong's numbers, right? Blindness is the word avareth. It is an ayin right there. There's that eye, sight, connected to the resh, the man of mind, and whatever covenant he's connected to, right? So blindness, to be blind is to have really, when I see this sight, so many times I look at that and say, wow, you know, if your sight is going to be connected, this I see the eye of Horus here when I look at this. If that's going to be your sight. Now, the ayin doesn't always mean the eye of Horus. That's not what it always means. But in this context, I believe that we can see that, right? Because of the context of what we're talking about. And the word is blindness. So to be blind is to have your sight connected to man's covenant, not Yah's covenant, man's covenant. All righty. All right, a little bit more here. Isaiah 29, 6 through 10. You shall be visited of Yahweh Sabaoth with thunder and with earthquake and great noise, with storm and tempest and the flame of devouring fire, and the multitude of all the nations that fight against Ariel, even all that fight against her and her munition, and that distress her, shall be as a dream of a night vision. It shall even be as when a hungry man dreams, and behold, he eats, but he awakens, and his soul is empty. Or as when a thirsty man dreams, and behold, he drinks, but he awakens, and behold, he is faint, and his soul has appetite. So shall the multitude of all the nations be that fight against Mount Zion. Stay yourselves and wonder, cry you out and cry. They are drunken, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink. For Yahweh has poured out upon you the ruach of deep sleep and has closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers, has he covered. Right? Very interesting here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I don't think I have too many more. Yeah, I don't have too much more to go. I know my part can get long, can't it? All right. Isaiah 29, 11 through 15. And the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a sefer that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, read this, I pray you. And he says, I cannot, for it is sealed. And the sefer is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, read this, I pray you. And he says, I'm not learned. Wherefore Adonai said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouth and with their lips, do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. Right? This is so important, right? They're following man's way. You know, they're connected to man's way of doing it. They've made a covenant with man's thoughts, not being able to see, not being able to perceive, not being able to understand, right? Bringing on blindness. Okay, so therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder, for the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent men shall be hid. Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from Yahweh, and their works are in the dark. And they say, who sees us and who knows us? 29, 16 through 21. Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he had no understanding? Is it not yet a very little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field, and the fruitful field shall be esteemed as a forest? And in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the sefer, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of obscurity and out of darkness. The meek also shall increase their joy in Yahweh, and the poor among men shall rejoice in the Holy One of Yasharel. For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off, that make a man an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproves in the gate, and turn aside the just for a thing of naught. You know, they had the scales of justice on their banner.
Yeah.
And then to finish up, Isaiah 29, 22 and through 24. Therefore, Thus says Yahweh, who redeemed Abraham concerning the house of Yaakov. Yaakov shall not now be ashamed, neither shall his face now wax pale. But when he sees his children, the work of my hands, in the midst of him, they shall sanctify my name and sanctify the Holy One of Yaakov, and shall fear the Elohai of Yasharel. They also that erred in the Ruach shall come to understanding, and they that murmured shall learn doctrine. There's hope for us. He's going to set it straight, right?
Hallelujah.
All righty. So that was my presentation.
That was so good. I loved it.
Good.
So much there. And always, every time while you're talking, I'm taking notes and getting stuff down. And so much of it is exactly in line with what Yahweh, the direction he was putting me in. And like I said, you don't even know what I've been working on. I don't know what you're working on. And a lot of times it's the same, which I think is great, because I know that means we're on it's his words, not ours. And that's what we always pray about with this, is that it is his words and not ours.
It is. It's funny, just to share one thing real quick. I think I've told you this, but when I first became a worship leader, it was in a very small church, and it was a very warfare church. In fact, I had nicknamed the pastors Ghostbusters because we did so much deliverance ministry. We mainly worked with the homeless and bikers, right? And that was what our ministry was. And so the way that they trained us and me as a worship leader, once they asked me to do that, they said, we're not going to ever tell you what we're doing, but we'll know by the songs that you choose and what you've chosen to share, to open up the service. We will know whether or not you are a praying woman. I was like, no pressure there.
Yeah, no pressure at all.
No pressure. But that's how they trained me. And I did that for 3 years, and it was good training, because I knew I had to get on my face and pray and ask Yah to show me what to do, because there was no other way of knowing what to do.
And that should be that way every single day of our lives. It would be so much easier if I often think, boy, I wish I had these skills and this knowledge back in the day, but it took all of that to get to where I'm at now. And we all have to respect that journey, don't we?
We really do. We do.
I look back mainly to go, thank goodness I made it here,
Mm-hmm.
Not out of any regret or anything, just as a reminder that how far I've come.
Yeah.
Which is so far. And when I started this, what's so amazing about Dan and the correlation between our sensory system is it's so evident through so much of Yah's words. And looking at Proverbs, and that in Hebrew is Mishli, right? I never know if I'm saying that one right. It's Mishli or Mishle, 2012. Yeah. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, Yahweh has made even both of them. It's just a reaffirmation or affirmation, or just to say, we wear this body that he made us for however long we live on this planet, and we take it for granted that he designed and made every part, the ear, the hearing ear, and the seeing eye. And he who has eyes to see and ears to hear, it's exactly that. We always just scrape the surface living our life. I feel like you've got to get a shovel and dig to get to the meat of the issue, to the heart of the issue. Even in Matthew or Mattiyahu 13:16 is, but blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Couldn't be any more simple than that.
Yep.
James 1:19, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath.
That's a good one.
Yes, I was fixing to say, I always am telling myself in difficult situations, slow to anger. Like I just repeat it to myself, to put the brakes on,
Yeah.
But like you said, if we let those emotions, even envy or jealousy, they bring all the other ones in with them. So
Yep.
in my mind now, I'm also going to be thinking, listen, be swift to hear, but slow to speak. Often someone said the best thing you can say is nothing.
Right. Right.
Just don't say anything. And sometimes I practice that, and I know it can be frustrating to some, but it's like, look, if I know that what might come out of my mouth might not be what this situation needs, I'm just not going to say it and wait.
Yeah.
And then in 1 Corinthians or Corinthium Rishon 2:9, but as it is written, eye has not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which Elohim has prepared for them that love him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in Psalms or Telahim 146:8, Yahweh opens the eyes of the blind. Yahweh raises them that are bowed down. Yahweh loves the righteous. And every time I see this, I think of I was once blind, but now I see. I've sang that song my whole life, and it didn't mean what it means until I've been on the narrow part of this path instead of the right side or the left side. I'm
right.
Feel like I put myself got out of the ditches and I'm on the narrow path.
Yeah. That's one thing. Curtis Reed has a ministry called The Donkey Speaks and River Shabbat. And he explains it so well about how we can be in one religious tradition or another religious tradition, but neither one of them are swimming in the living waters.
Right.
And it's a really good, I've always liked that because it's so important.
It is. And it's really hard to explain it to you because when you're in one ditch or the other ditch, you think it's the only ditch. You have no idea, at all. And that's what it was to us, opening our eyes, you know. And with Dan, you pretty much covered. He was the fifth son, and the Testament says he was the seventh. You and I had a discussion about that it may have been that he was born of Bilhah, but I've noticed that sometimes it's like that, and I can't wait to have the understanding when we meet Yah to be like, oh, okay, I get that now.
Right.
It's coming. And you covered that he was the judge and the Genesis 49:17. I also found that very interesting and felt it prophetic for the time we're in now.
Yeah.
And then Moses's blessing 33:22. He's the lion's cub springing out of Bashan. So interesting.
So interesting.
And that's another thing. I can't wait to meet Moshe. I think about that often, what it'll be like to be where we can converse actually with them.
Yes.
The time is coming.
It is.
So in the eyes and the ears, there's so much with all of the sensory systems. I think it would take me forever if we broke them all down. So I focused on eyes to see and ears to hear.
Yeah.
And with these eyes, sight, and ears, hearing, the brain and other structures include the optic nerve, your retina, your vestibulocochlear nerve, the tympanic membrane assists these organs in allowing humans to see images and process sounds into things that are meaningful to us. One thing I wanted to touch on is when you lose your sight, your other senses increase. Your hearing increases. I've had friends in school that were pretty much legally blind, and they could hear just a ridiculous tuning to their hearing. They could hear a mouse walk across a room. It was just that much. And the same goes for the other. When you lose one of your senses, the others compensate so that your being can still function in the world.
And, I've noticed that with my husband because he is pretty much, I'd say, about 75% deaf total. you know,
Mhm.
and he reads lips. So of course this whole mask thing has been made things very difficult on
Yeah.
him, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
he is so perceptive. His sight is very keen. And his insight, you know, is very keen. He has like an extra ability in that area to be able to perceive things. It's very
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
My uncle, my mom's brother, his wife was a twin that was born to parents that both the mom and the dad were deaf mutes.
Wow.
And both of their children, their twin girls, could see and hear.
Wow.
So it was quite interesting. Back in the day, back in the, I guess it was the 40s, they almost lost custody of their children because they were trying to be deemed unfit because they could not hear or speak, or they
Wow.
were deaf mutes. That was it. Yeah, they
Yeah.
couldn't hear or speak. But they raised two very intelligent. My Aunt Peggy is still sharp as a tack. Her mother, Mrs. Griffith, could not hear, but she could feel vibrations.
Wow.
So she knew if us kids were ruckusing through the house because she could feel the vibrations on the floorboards and come after us.
Right.
You couldn't get anything over on that woman. She had such a sense about her. And sometimes we would be just as quiet as we could be, but she knew if we were up instead of sleeping, if we were giggling or talking, she knew it. And she would come in there and, tell us to go to bed, go
Yeah.
to bed. It's really funny. But she had that. We used to say she just had that sixth sense because she could literally feel the vibrations through the floorboards if we were ruckusing around.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Couldn't get anything over on her. Uh, the eyes are highly developed photosensitive organs for analyzing the form, intensity, and color of light reflected from objects and provided the sense of sight. The eye contains transparent tissues that refract that light to focus the image. A layer of photosensitive cells is the retina, and a system of neurons. There we see those neurons again. I know we talked about that back when we were talking about the brain, but
Yeah.
it just shows you how it all has to work together, just like all the tribes have to
Yeah.
come back together, how they all work together then, how we intended to work together now. It's just a necessary thing for everything to work correctly. And if any part of it is out of whack, you're blind or you're deaf. It's
Right.
they all have to work together. So it takes all of these signals or potentials and turns them into an image that we see. The retina contains rods and cones and photoreceptor neurons that will send those signals along that optic nerve that's at the back of your eye to the brain. And the rods are responsible for the monochromatic vision in relatively dim light, and cones provide the color vision and tend to function better in the presence of light. And you'll notice you've got your eye will dilate and constrict that's what we do when we're checking your eye with a light.
Yeah.
The light sensitive pigment in the rods, rhodopsin, decomposes in the presence of light and triggers a complex series of reactions that initiate nerve impulses on the optic nerve. You have those three sets of cones that are red, blue, and green, and that's what you have. And all the colors that you see are from those three sets of cones that are red, blue, and green. So they provide the color vision, and each set contains a different light sensitive pigment, which is sensitive to different wavelengths of light, and the color perceived depends on which set or sets of cones are stimulated. How intricate is that? I
Yeah.
mean, just reading that part, and that's not even going into the deepest part I could go into, but wow. And if you want to understand it, I did put this link in here. If you want to dig deeper into vision, if you homeschool
Cool.
and you want that information for your children to do in schooling, but It
Yeah.
is just so complex. I don't know how anyone could look at even just the eye and think that just happened when we crawled out of the mud somewhere, you know?
Right.
It's insane.
That is,
Every part of that had to be constructed by Yahweh in such a way so that we could see at all.
yeah. It's very interesting because these aren't the primary colors. We've
Right.
got, red, blue, and yellow are our primary colors. And this is red, blue, and green. So, I mean, that's interesting to me.
Right. And that's where all of your ability to see every color comes from those three.
Wow.
Yeah. And people with color blindness usually have an issue with those tones. Either they didn't develop. Sometimes you just hitting your head can having a head trauma we know it can cause blindness. I was in a wreck once and my seat belt, I was in an old truck and it popped out when we got hit head on. And when I hit the windshield, my vision went for like 10, 15 minutes. I could not see because I hit my head that hard right in the front.
Wow.
And your vision bounces off the back. So what you see and perceive as being straight up, it actually is inverted and flipped around on your optic chiasm that sits at the back of your brain. It's quite interesting when you think about it. Like, are we living upside down? I don't know, because it takes it in and flips it around to the right way. So a lot of times if you hit the back of your head, that causes blindness,
Yeah.
It's all so intricate. Yahweh was so amazing. And that's why I wanted to put this picture up here. We've got to understand how this works. So it comes in, the light will come in, and here's your iris, the ciliary body. This is the choroid, which is like what it all sits in. And there's this vitreous fluid. This is actually fluid in here, right? So you've got your lens, your pupil. That's what we're looking at with the light that constricts and opens based on light. It'll get very small when we're shining light in it, and it'll get very big when it's dark. And the reason is that it's controlling the amount of light that it's letting in or taking out. It doesn't want damage if it's too much light, and it wants to help you see if it's dark. Cataracts generally affect this layer back here. It has that milky appearance, but it actually is coming from a defect or that issue over the lens. So they will come in and remove that and replace it. The cornea can be scratched. I've had that done before, just from a contact that had a piece of something on it, maybe even a microscopic piece of dust. It doesn't take very much. But like we talked about with the skin system, remember we were talking about how that's our largest organ and protection in our body. There's actually that skin over the outside that's protecting our eye from that. So it's just amazing. And the process of it, the light passes through that cornea that's shaped like a dome. That's that dome, and it bends the light to help our eye focus it. So it just makes you wonder. You and I have talked about how we only see about 10% because our brain can only process about 10%. I just really wonder what everything looks like, what it all is. So some of this,
does it say, the word says we live behind a glass darkly, or we see through a glass darkly.
Darkly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that light enters in through that opening called the pupil, the iris, which is the colored part of your eye, and it controls how much light the pupil lets in. And then the light passes through the lens, which is the clear inner part of the eye, and the lens works together with the cornea to focus correctly on the retina. And when the light hits the retina, a light-sensitive layer of tissue at the back of the eye, special cells called photoreceptors, turn the light into electrical signals, and they travel through this optic nerve to the brain. So it comes in and goes all the way back, and then the brain turns the signals into images that you can see. Just, to me, the eyes are so amazing. And for some reason, when I started on this, y'all was like, now we're going to talk about hallucinations.
Wow.
So most folks probably think hallucinations have to do with seeing things that aren't there, but there's a lot more to it than that. It could mean you could have the touch or even smell something that doesn't exist. My brother has a history of a severe car wreck with brain damage, where he was in a coma for about a month on a ventilator, and they deemed him brain dead. And a miracle happened, and he was brought back to us. When he gets ready to have a seizure, he smells weird things and tastes things that aren't there. He'll smell smoke, or he'll smell something really awful. Like sometimes he can't even describe what the smell is. But we started learning when he would complain of that he was getting ready to have a seizure. It's a hallmark of it.
Wow.
So hallucinations aren't just you're schizophrenic and have a mental disorder. It could be your body's warning system that something's fixing to happen.
Wow.
There are many different causes of hallucinations, right? And it could be mental illness called schizophrenia, or a nervous system problem like Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, or a number of things. It does not always mean a psychiatric issue. And I've had many patients with Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's that's part of their disease process of their brain and whatever the breakdown is, where they actually see and hear things all the time that we can't see. So hallucinations are defined as the perception of an object or an event in any of the five senses in the absence of an actual external stimuli. And they're experienced by patients with conditions that span several fields again, which could even include ophthalmology. So with your eye, if you have a damage to your eye, I've known someone that was in a bad accident and they always see shadows on the side, even when there's no shadows, like in their periphery. You can lose your peripheral vision. That's another process to it. But also what I wanted to tie in here, let's see, non-psychiatrist visual hallucinations, one type of sensory misperception, often trigger requests for psychiatric consultation. Although visual hallucinations are not always pathognomonic or a primary psychiatric illness. So thinking about anger, thinking about envy, thinking about jealousy, and when we allow things into our body or in through our eyes, in through our ears, exhibiting those emotions, I have wondered often what else that brings in. Like you said, it opens the gates to everything.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful abnormal psychology teacher in nursing school. I actually had him for abnormal psych 1 and 2, which was just, wow. You ever want to blow your mind about the mind, take part 2, especially, with just made me go to the grocery and stare at everyone thinking, oh my goodness. Oh, you have this, you have that, it just unfortunately is what happens. And then I diagnosed myself, which is funny. But he brought up a point one day, and a very deep one, and said, what if we find out when we get to heaven, when we meet Yah, when we meet God, if we find out these people that we've called schizophrenic and we've medicated, what if they could see what we could not? What if they actually could see and perceive the things that we could not? Yeah. And I've been around, there was a gentleman that I grew up around. He had severe schizophrenia. He would come to the pool where all of us kids would hang out in the summer in the snack bar, and he would have conversations with Napoleon and Hitler, and you could ask him and he would tell you who he was talking to.
Wow.
And it was just something that always stuck out to me. I always wondered, is he really seeing them? Is he really able to see them? You know, it's something to think about.
It's really interesting. You know, I've seen a lot of videos lately, you know, of people that have participated in the current medical solution and the sudden adult death syndrome, right? Sad, right? But what's interesting is you see a lot of videos, and of course, with all the deep fakes, I don't know if these are real accounts or not, because I don't know these people, right? But what you see is them, you know, definitely watching something, you know, that nobody else can see before they collapse and die.
Right. Very absolutely. And it makes you wonder, because I don't know how you can deep fake the number of videos. I've looked into that. I've actually watched a lot of that as a nurse. I want to understand. I always want to know what's happening with the current, you know, thing that's going on. I always want to understand what now we're seeing. And we all know things are going to change as time progresses after the said events. So they very much are having visual and auditory hallucinations while that's going on. And I've watched these from countries all over the world. It's not just in one place. These are being reported from everywhere, where you can just see them stop what they're doing and watch something, you know. And I've taken care of enough patients with those issues that I understand what's happening. They really they're seeing what I cannot.
Right.
And that's unsettling when you're the one that cannot see. When I'm like, should I run?
Right. You know, that's so interesting, because it, you know, that Yah tells us that, you know, several times in several ways throughout the scripture, you know, we're told, you know, you're going to hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. You'll be brought before counselors and before men, but you're not to worry, because in the self same hour that you're right there, it's going to be given to you what you're supposed to be saying, you know, because we're dealing in a realm that we don't know how to deal in that. I can't see that stuff. But the important thing is being able to hear Yahweh's Ruach speaking to us, so that we know how to operate in a realm where we don't even know what we're dealing with half the time.
And that's the problem, is I went through most of my life thinking like everyone else thinks, that it was just, oh, that's, you know, that's a bunch of hooey. Now I know the truth. Now I know there is a completely unseen world around us, and how egotistical are we to think that there couldn't be. And that drives me crazy now. I'm like, you need to open your eyes and ears. And going along with that, in Matthew 6:22 and 23, the light of the body is the eye. Look at there. If therefore your eye is single, your whole body shall be full of light. But if your eye be evil, your whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you be darkness, how great is that darkness? James and I talk so much to my children how important it is. What you put in your eyes and your ears matters, and what small children are allowed to watch and listen to matters, because you can let light in or you can let darkness in, but they both will not exist at the same time. And that was the hardest thing to learn on this walk. You can't have one foot in one world and one foot in the other world. You're either with Yah or you're against him. That's just the way it is. And it really matters that much. What you watch and what you listen to. Our eyes and ears are gates through which we are tempted. The ruach of envy, jealousy, and pride. Here we go, same as you. All through our eyes and ears, I would venture to say, just like you covered that earlier. He keeps pressing this on us, because I think he really wants people to understand there's such evil being played to our children and being wrapped up in what should be an innocent thing, and it's not anymore. It's not innocent anymore, and it's changing their ability to cognitively understand the light from the darkness. And I think that's the point, is to confuse the darkness for light.
Yeah, think about that with what's happened with, okay, we're going to mask everybody and all these little children, this is normally in a normal human interaction that, when little children are learning how to base their perception on facial expressions and, body language and the words that are being spoken, and try to put it together to learn how to perceive correctly. Right. But now we cut it all down, lock everybody down, sit them in front of a TV with evil programming, going to a place in the brain that we, barely really even understand, most of them, that, that state that we go into, to where we're just zoned out, just totally, all the gates are open and you're zoned in on the programming that's coming at you. And the programming's evil. And we're sitting the toddlers down in front of this, that, taking away reality, and putting this in its place.
Absolutely. And it goes with the music that they listen to as well. You can't just say, I'm listening to it for the tune. It matters what the words are. I've had so many people say that, oh, I'm just listening to the music. It's subliminally, no, you're not. You hear all of it. And you are even hearing things that you can't audibly hear and perceive. There are things in there sometimes that aren't at a level where you can hear them, and only your subconscious can hear them. And it matters. It really does.
It does.
We see our eyes and ears are used for assessment and are key in our interpretations of life. As you said, when we mask ourselves around children, they get their verbal cues and their visual cues from our face. They understand from our emotions. Are we smiling? Are we mad? Are we sad? That helps them cognitively advance. When you take even a baby, an infant, I can't imagine what it's been like to have an infant trying to grow cognitively and going out and seeing all these people that are masked. I can't imagine what developmental setbacks. Well, I know what they are, because I've seen the literature that has been sent out through various nursing sites I'm on, that they're delayed. They're severely delayed, and they're having to go through occupational therapy and speech therapy skyrocketed, because these children aren't speaking right. They aren't learning right. They can't look at your face and watch your lips move. We mainly, when we're infants and toddlers and learning how to speak, we're reading lips too.
Right.
We are looking at our mom, we're looking at our family, and we're watching them speak. And there's so much that you get from that assessment. It's necessary for them to thrive and grow. And we're going to see a whole plethora of psychological and developmental issues that's going to be more evident as the years go forward.
Yeah.
So much of the time I've talked to you about this, when I was a nurse in the field, I could do a whole nurse head to toe assessment, which is what we have to do anytime we have a new patient, whether in the hospital or home health. We have to assess from head to toe to see where the problem is, right?
Yeah.
And with our eyes and our ears, we can assess, can they talk? Are they able to talk without stopping to breathe? What position are they in when they talk? Are they leaning forward because they can't get breath? Are they like this, hunched over because they're in pain? Are they using all these muscles through here to breathe because they're having such problems in their lungs or their heart? What color is their lips and fingertips? Are they blue? Are they ashen? Does that mean that they're not getting enough oxygen? Is their blood flow bad? But the main thing I could always tell is how weak they were, just by looking at someone. Are they crumpled up? you know?
Yeah.
Are they sitting up and bright and bushy-tailed, or are they just collapsed upon themselves? That's severe weakness. And okay, goodness, I really need to go deeper here now because
Yeah.
there's an issue, with them being able to even sit up.
Right.
So getting into the human ear, it's a lot, I'm telling you. So the
It's
human
amazing.
ear,
I love it.
it is. That's why I only tried to focus on these two, because I knew it was going to be so much. And when we add these together, hopefully we'll be able to do a book. So someday we'll have this all of it together. It's going to be amazing.
Yep, we will.
So the human ear includes the outer ear, the middle ear, and that consists of the tympanic membrane, the auditory ossicles, and the inner ear containing the cochleae, the semicircular canals, and the vestibulocochlear nerve. The outer ear is responsible for transferring sound waves from the environment to the middle ear. And we all know if you have middle ear problems like I do, it can make your life horrible. The world feels flipped upside down. So the middle ear is responsible for amplifying sound waves into strong signals for the hearing receptors to detect. And the inner ear uses mechanoreceptors to detect stimuli for hearing in the cochleae and equilibrium, that's your balance, in semicircular canals. And it sends the nerve impulses along that vestibulocochlear nerve to the brain. And the sound waves enter the ear and transferred along the nerve as action potentials again, this time for hearing instead of sight. And they go to the brain again for just to be deciphered and turn into meaningful sound. And just as many people as I've taken care of that have had visual hallucinations, you're going to find out that there's more with auditory hallucinations.
Yeah.
So look at this awesome ear. And to me, it's a lot similar to the structures in the eye, and things get sent to the brain along the same kind of way. It has everything to do with your balance. And that's what I was saying about inner ear problems can cause you to literally feel like you're standing on your head. And it's awful. That these little temporal bones, see all these little holes in here, that allows air in there that assists with your ability to hear. This design by Yah is absolutely amazing and unbelievable. And there's no way that this just happened from us evolving out of mud or from whatever people would like to think in their craziness.
It takes so much faith to believe that.
It really does. It takes more faith to believe in that than it does in looking at this and realizing
intelligent design. Yeah.
Like how the genius of this is and how delicate these issues are. I had an accident when I was 5 where I was attacked by a dog. And this part, when he bit me back here, was ruptured. So I constantly, it sounds like that ear is in water, even though it's not. It's just because the scar tissue being over that, just that little issue. And if you've ever had your eardrum rupture, which I had happen years later, jumping out of an airplane on purpose. With a parachute. I didn't just jump out of an airplane, but for some reason I thought that was a good idea to do. My eardrum ruptured, and that was terribly painful. I must say, you don't want to do that. I can sympathize with Robert over the ear issues. It's one of the worst things as far because you can't get to it when it's hurting. All of these delicate little structures in here, each are so vital and important to just be able to hear. And any one of them out of whack and you're deaf.
Wow.
A lot of cochlear transplants I've taken care when I worked in the NICU at Vanderbilt. We had teeny tiny babies that were born way too early, and it affected their hearing because things have to cook inside for a certain amount of time for all your processes to work when you're born. So they would actually attach a device within and a device right behind the ear that's like a little magnet, and they could hear perfectly fine. Just amazing
That's
some of
amazing.
the technology that we do have to help
Yeah.
those that have had those issues. So auditory hallucinations are often associated again with schizophrenia and other mental health conditions, but they can happen for several other reasons, such as hearing loss, and they aren't always a sign of mental health condition. I know I've told you before, I had an issue last June where I had a reaction. Actually, it was to fish oil, which is funny that it was something so simple could cause such a problem, but I ended up with brain swelling. And I had to go to the ER several times and fight because I didn't have what they wanted me to have. So they weren't
Right.
helping me. You
Right.
know, it was during the season of you were only allowed to have one thing wrong with you and nothing else. So
Right.
I literally had to diagnose myself and tell them what to give me. And they did. Praise Yah.
Yeah.
But the next weeks after that, I had lots of weird hallucinations, and some of them were visual and some of them were hearing. And I promise you, it's a little disconcerting when you hear something in a completely silent house, and you know that you shouldn't be hearing that.
Right.
And I definitely do not have schizophrenia, so. Researchers estimate that 5% to 28% of people in the United States experience auditory hallucinations. That's a big number, 28%. And they are the most common type of hallucination. Some people experience those auditory I can't say that word, hypnagogic hallucinations that specifically take place as they're falling asleep. I've had this before where you feel like you hear someone call your name or you hear something in the other room. And they're common. Lots of people have them. And again, there's not anything to have concern for. However, I think about my teacher, Mr. Doak, that said, what if what we say is nothing, like, oh, it's just a hallucination? What if at that moment you're actually hearing something that's actually there? You just can't see what's going on. So in Proverbs 4:20 through 4:22, my son, attend to my words, incline your ear unto my sayings. Let them not depart from your eyes. Guard them in the midst of your heart, for they are life unto those that find them, and health to all their flesh. And I think it's so key with Dan that these were so, the workings of the eye and the ear are so intricate, and yet at the same time there could be these hallucinations, these things that get us off our track, anger, jealousy, envy, all of these things welcome in. And I think that these principalities can affect our vision. They can affect our hearing. They can not only lock us in our mind in these things, but they can also make sure they're pumping things in through our eyes and our ears that are going to affect our ability to see the lightness instead of the darkness. You know, watching horror movies creates receptors in your brain, just the same as if you smoke a cigarette, just the same as if you're drinking alcohol. You get these receptors because you get an endorphin release when you're scared. That's why people love to jump out and scare you, you know, because you're going to get that endorphin release, that fight or flight, that immediate, like, oh my goodness, I need to react. Right. And that's addicting to children and teenagers and grownups that want to watch horror movies and want to watch true crime movies. Right. They're feeding that seed of that beast. They don't even know what they're doing. They don't even have a clue why it's so interesting, why they just can't watch it enough. You know, I used to binge watch the crime TV shows. I used to watch all of that mess. And it's simply because you create those receptors for those specific principalities to manipulate you, you know? And how much further would it take for a visual hallucination or an auditory hallucination to act on your anger and make you actually act out some of the things that you've watched in those movies and those shows? I think there's a
Wow.
correlation in the breakdown of our society, and why you see so and so went crazy and killed his whole family. This
Yeah.
woman drowned her kids. I mean, what
Yeah.
were they watching? What were they putting into their mind? You know, oh,
Absolutely.
they seemed like a normal family in a big house. And you see them on the news. You see the house and the cars and everything's fine. You know, it's not it's rarely that you see this in the places in poverty, but they'll make it seem like, oh, that just happens, you know, in the poor part of town. No,
Right.
it doesn't.
No. No.
No, it doesn't. So, like you said, the tribe of Dan is best known for being the tribe that produced Samson. The judge was a Nazarite and drew power from never cutting his hair.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting too. And I've decided I really want to dig into that and try to see what the correlation would have been there, you know, how that was worked. And also, the other deities and the golden calf that was built in Dan. There's a lot of information out there about that.
Yeah. You know, one other thing I thought interesting was that, you know, at the finality of his life, when he reveals the secret of his power is the fact that he's a Nazarite and his hair's never been cut, and Delilah cuts it. The first thing they did is put out his eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I forgot about that too, but wow.
Yeah.
And then here we go into this part. You'll love this part. This really got me too. And you touched on this as well.
Yeah.
It's funny how we touch on the same things. In the Testament of Dan, I love this. I love all the testaments of the patriarchs.
Yeah.
I would urge anyone and everyone to read them. They're such an eye-opening experience and give so much depth to the tribes and an understanding of ourselves, you know, what we have come from, and we have, you know, what we have come from. So for anger is blindness and does not suffer one to see the face of any man with truth. Wow. There's that, what you were talking about, blind anger.
Yes.
For though it be a father or a mother, he behaved towards them as enemies. Though it be a brother, he know him not. Though it be a prophet of Yahweh, he disobey him. Though a righteous man, he regard him not. Though a friend, he does not acknowledge him. This person can't even see the people that he loves anymore.
Yeah.
It's affected the vision that much that you can't even recognize, this is my friend. This is my mom, my dad, my confidant. For the spirit of anger encompass him with the net of deceit and blind his eyes, and through lying darken his mind and give him his peculiar vision.
Yeah.
Ever hear the saying of blind rage? I know I've had it before. Yeah. I've definitely been there. And that is what is being described. In battle, I imagine that it's the driving force of a warrior to feed off of and give self over to that blind rage that has taken away the ability to see the opponents as human beings or a brother and sister. You can't see that anymore.
Yeah.
When discussing hallucinations, whether auditory, visual, taste, or touch, could it be that these ruach of anger or deceit are upon the people? And I've already discussed, my abnormal psych teacher in college said, wouldn't it be stupid one day if we found out they are seeing things that we can't see? We're just not able to see it. But that doesn't mean they're not seeing it.
Right.
What do our own emotions or lack of control over them bring into our lives? Again, I say we must guard so dutifully our eye gates and our ear gates. We must practice self-control over our emotions as well. What we are giving power to, just be lacking self-control. What are we giving power to with our lack of self-control?
Yeah.
And I think didn't you read these
I
two?
did.
Okay, cool. So I'm not going to read them again and that's so awesome. The parts in there that's just saying, even when he brought up about Enoch, the righteous, that your prince is Satan.
Right.
I mean, I just realized that when we're watching things we shouldn't be watching, when you're participating, that's
Yeah.
the thing. You're not just watching something that's you're not removed from it. At the moment it enters in through your eyes, and you saw that process of the eye, how that worked, right?
Yeah.
How it went in and straight back into your brain.
Yes.
You know, you're participating, you're welcoming it in to your body.
Absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. Yeah, that's just amazing.
Absolutely. And that was mine.
Well, I loved it, Lee. That was just so interesting. I've thoroughly enjoyed doing this with you. I guess when we come back the next time after Sukkot, we'll be coming back with Asher. And then after that, we'll finish up with Naphtali. So
we're almost through it.
We are. I was trying to remember what have we got with Asher. Let me see. I've got my sheets here.
I don't think I brought mine up.
I do have mine on this desk somewhere. Let me see. Here it is. Here it is. Okay, so we'll be, let me see here. The skin system. Interesting. Yeah.
It's what? I'm sorry, you froze up a second.
Oh, it'll be the skin system.
Oh, that will be interesting.
Yep.
And then
all the structures of connective tissue, including the fat glands, the blood vessels, and nails. Right. Interesting.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I remember when we first started talking about doing this. Isn't their banner a tree?
It's the olive tree, which is the oil. Tree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the oil. And that's what's in their prophecy. It's really interesting. Yeah. So that'll be fun to dig into.
It will. I briefly, before we really dug into this, went through that one was when it's going to be super interesting. Yeah. It really is. I can't wait for that.
Me too. All righty. Well, I hope everybody has enjoyed this today, whether you're watching now or you watch in the future. Thank you for being with us. We're thoroughly enjoying it. I hope you guys have a wonderful Sukkot. We'll probably be doing mainly some replays as we're all getting ready now to go on Sukkot. I think you and James have a replay for today scheduled.
We do.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing because we're all going to celebrate Sukkot. And so we'll see if we are able to put any pre-records or I know you and James have done some pre-records we're going to play during Sukkot. Yeah.
Yes, we're on Tuesday during Sukkot. We will be showing we recorded the songs of ascent, so that should be very interesting and lovely. Actually, they're quite beautiful, and the whole story behind it. So
that's
I
great.
hope it blesses when that comes on. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Thank you so much for doing that. That's wonderful. And so we hope everybody has a wonderful Sukkot, and we'll be back with all of our shows and new stuff after that. All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, blessings, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Their journey began in Yasharel, but they were scattered across the face of the earth, each one with its own beats, and each one with its own rhythm. As the dry bones are being revived, the beat begins again at the heart of the tribe.